All right, let's talk. So, Doro44 made a tweet, not to defend multi-billion-dollar company, but aren't gacha mechanics explained in the game? If you're allowing your kids to spend your money in a gacha game, then that's just bad parenting. I'm not sorry. That doesn't really even sound like Doro's voice. I was wondering if he was having a bad day. But anyway, there are a lot of takes on this comment, and it's multifaceted. I think Doro shouldn't really be casting judgment on people that he wants to inspire or motivate. That doesn't really sound like him. I mean, I can see where people are coming from and the idea that he might just be defending his income, but I'd rather not assume that for the same reason. I don't want to pass judgment when I really don't know. But the way it's expressed, even though I can agree with this point, the way it's expressed, I think, does more harm than good. But the value on the point. So, to be clear, what I mean by the judgment is when you say you are allowing your kids and you're a bad parent, nobody wants to hear that, and they're just going to fight with you about it. But I think you can express, I do think you can motivate. Like, I always refer to it as getting behind and pushing instead of getting in front and wagging your finger, expecting people to come towards you, you know? So you kind of go to where a person is and you push them forward if you think if it's a good direction, but at least you can kind of get a better perspective. They can get your perspective better and you get their perspective better from where they're standing. So in this case, I would say you don't want to easily allow the government or any entity to parent for you. And that would be the message, or the way I would express that point. Because I think even the worst parent, if if you're looking at someone who's doing the worst job of paying attention to their kids, or I won't say the worst job, person who doesn't care, but I mean someone who's actually just failing for one reason or another because they maybe they don't have enough time or whatever. And to them, hearing that, I think would motivate them more than condemn them. That if you're not doing it and someone else steps in, you probably won't like the result. And I think at the same time, all of the people who would be celebrating this supposed win from the FTC would notice that point as well. Because as someone who's old enough to have witnessed pretty much the entire history of the video game industry, I can guarantee you want to stay in control of your boundaries. And you most certainly want to stay in control of your children's boundaries. It's almost never a win when the government has to come in and protect you. And I don't mean that in any way against the government. Hopefully I can explain that quickly. It's the same with anybody. If you let your neighbor come in and set your boundaries, like it's just... I think anybody can see how immediately that falls apart, right? So, because at the end of the day, it's who's to say that they stop the line wherever you think it should be. You liked the reason that they came in, but are you going to actually agree with where they stop? Like I remember when Mortal Kombat came out, way before any of you were born, but just the big issue about violence. And while for me personally, I hate violence. I hate violence in the terms of I don't like seeing people get hurt. I don't like anything that is implying to me that someone's getting hurt. And I noticed that from when I was very young, that there was this weird reaction that my brain would have to violence. And I don't know if it was my parents, the way I was raised, or just coincidence, but I noticed it when I would play video games or I would watch certain movies. The best thing I can say is just something wasn't right. Let's just put it that way. I was like, I shouldn't feed this dog. And so, unlike most of the other things I did in my childhood, somehow I recognized that was something I should not entertain. And that for me, certain kinds of violence would trigger bad things for my mental state, and I didn't want to pursue it. I didn't want to keep tickling that. So that was my line, though. Now, Mortal Kombat and games like that would be over my line. Do you really want someone to draw your lines based on mine? There's a lot of games that I can't touch, or I don't touch, that are kind of repulsive to me. But I shouldn't be setting the line for anybody, whether I worked in the government or whether I was your grandfather. You know what I mean? Like that's the idea. There's a second example, like especially one that really applies to these gacha games in general, and a lot of the games that would be really popular in this space or in this audience. I think RNG is completely predatory. I think it's honestly more predatory and more harmful than gambling, because gambling has a far more limited resource. But and here's why. Like, see, because gaming to me, seeing it start to where it is now, like gaming was about humiliation, pointing out your weakness, your inability to do something, your skill issue, basically, and it engages your brain. And like, if you go back to seeing like your death screen or your you lose screen, you died screen, like the goal of the game is to humiliate you, and it's good because it's exposing and it's triggering to your brain, like you died, like you failed the survival goal, and your brain actually becomes very engaged, very focused. You even will become mad, but you are aggressively wanting to recover from that humiliation, and so it's great because it puts you into this state, and it's like, people from the outside can't understand what that entranced state is that it seems like their kids are in when they're just playing these games. But the original games were like that, and they're exhausting. Like they have a natural limit, just like any sport, just like trying to write a book or make a song. Like, failure is motivating. and it's extremely engaging. And I guess just probably you could say it was addicting, because what happens is that once you actually overcome the skill issue, you literally, as a person, gain experience, you gain skill, and your brain rewards you with pride because you look back and you're like, I couldn't do something. I practiced, I struggled against it, I faced the humiliation, and then I got pride in proportion to all of that difficulty. And then that feeling, like I said, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I can't tell you if any of this is scientifically valid, but I think everyone can understand what I'm saying. That's what triggers you to then want to do it again. You want to play more difficult games. You want to go through that cycle again. And I would think that's an addictive experience, but so is pretty much everything that you get good at in life, right? And so like it's a very good thing, but as any gooner will tell you, you can trick your brain into thinking you're doing anything. And so RNG and RPGs in general were, in my opinion, when they first entered into, not all of them obviously, but just with this, you give me time, I give you something. Those types of games, they were tricking the brain into thinking it was in that process. That, oh, I don't have, and then it does a very good job of tricking you that you actually did something, pride-worthy, but nothing was gained. No actual experience and no ability, right? And so the pride is false, and it only works inside the game's mechanisms. If you get better at a Souls game, or if you get better at Osu, you get better at the things that you need to actually be good at life. You know what I mean? Like you can take those skills literally to construction, to any sport. You know what I mean? Like you're actually gaining motor skills and ability to pay attention, ability to memorize and notice a pattern, recognize a pattern. You get better at StarCraft, Tetris, Street Fighter, all these things. Your time invested in the game is measured against your ability to actually improve. It's very good for you. Even if just understanding how your brain works and the value of practice. You get none of that with RNG gated achievements. And so then you take that to the number of people that feel like they're losers in life. They might even be, it's not, so what, we all are. That's the point. That's the point of the humiliation being at the beginning of the game. It's telling you, you're a loser. Do something about it, right? And so, but these games trick them into feeling that you can overcome being a loser just by sitting in front of it for a long period of time. And you know that you've encountered those people. They feel like they accomplished something. You know it, I know it, we see them all the time. And you can see a very clear difference. But their illusion only lasts inside that game world. That's what's so predatory. Because then they get so kind of embedded to where they identify with that game, because that's where they achieve something. That's where they become, and they didn't actually do anything, and it causes them to retreat more from the world, where it exposes that your pride is false. You didn't become faster, smarter, more logical, more strategic. You just, not only that, but you wasted that time to get a ding from a game that confused you into thinking you accomplished something. So I think RNG and that entire wave of gaming, I think is the most dangerous thing about games today. But where would I draw the line? I love the RNG in a roguelike, for example, even facing random opponents online, honestly, even to a certain extent, just padding gameplay experience in a less punishing way, because there are a lot of games where it's like, okay, you have to stay in this area for a certain period of time. Yeah, you're still just farming, you're still just grinding, but you are, just because of repetition, gaining a skill. So it's like, where is that line? You are getting better at it. Even if you already know how to beat this enemy, doing it 100 times will actually make you better at the game, but it just doesn't humiliate you every second that you're actually gaining that skill. So I'm like, so how would I draw that line? And if the government doesn't understand the nuance to that sort of thing, how are they going to set lines that don't destroy the whole industry? You understand what I'm saying? See, Mario jumps on some brown person's head and squashes them flat just for walking by. How do I defend that that's okay? If someone says it's not okay, I never even thought of that. But you try to defend it against someone who says it's violent and abusive of indigenous cultures. Now you have to go try to explain like the Goomba is just a thing that it's not really a worthwhile life form. You know what I mean? Like you don't want people that don't understand games in anywhere setting the boundaries. And I actually had this happen with my best friend, and this human, I respect them more than any human on the planet. And I already told you how I felt about violence, and we agree 99% of the time. But we were playing these games, and she thought this game that I wanted her to play was too violent, and I was like, it didn't trigger anything for me. And there's these shows that she watched that I think are offensively violent. She eats them up. And I'm like, all right, we just got to agree to disagree on those places. But I'm glad that she's not in charge of setting my boundaries, because she would ruin a lot of things for me. And she's about as close as you get to being me as I've encountered a person. We agreed that much, and it still would be that damaging to have her setting my boundaries. So I can't express that enough. I really hope people are paying attention to that and not seeing the short-term win that, okay, maybe if the government steps in, this game will become less predatory. You don't want the government protecting you from predators. That shortcut never stops where you want it to, because the government could not care at all what state they leave the game industry in when they leave, especially if they got bullied in by claims of being unsafe. Think of all the different things that they can find unsafe? Why is Mona not wearing enough clothes? Why are her boobs shaking like that? Why is her cleavage showing? Now somebody's kid went to school and pulled some girl's shirt down, and they blamed it on Yanagi. It's like you just don't want it. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, I have very few advantages in the industry being as old as I am, but I've seen this path. I've seen the victories and I've seen the losses, and it cycles back around every so often that someone makes the mistake because it seems to be on their side at the moment that the government stepped in. It never ends well. So again, being judgmental doesn't motivate anybody. That's what I would say about this tweet. I'm surprised, because I would think that Doro, one of the reasons I like him is that he seems to generally have that positive spin. It's weird to see him making such a judgmental expression, but I think everyone can agree it's in your best interest to parent your own kids, whether that's keeping them from spending too much money, consuming content that's harmful to them, falling for the tricks of kind of any predator, to be honest with you. And it's in our best interest to minimize the places where someone else or something else gets to make those decisions for us, because this is the first shot. It's unlikely to be the last, so it may not be something to celebrate just because right now it seems to be anti our enemy, which is this predatory corporation. So that's all I have to say on that. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.